Most folks think the forest is quiet, but out here on the road, I've heard things between the trees that don't belong. Tonight, on Trucker of the Night, I've got 4 stories from people who went in deep and came back different, if they came back at all. The trail that grew back. I've driven through every type of landscape this country has to offer. Desert, swamp, frozen back roads, cities that feel like you're rolling through someone's nightmare. But nothing ever put a real chill in my bones like the forest up near Crater Lake in Oregon. I wasn't hauling anything special that week. It was a dead leg run, empty trailer, just repositioning for a pickup out of Klamath Falls. My dispatcher gave me an extra day, said I could take a break if I wanted. I'd been meaning to stretch my legs anyway. Figured I'd find a trail, walk a few miles, get my lungs full of pine-scented air, and clear my head from all the noise that builds up out here. The spot I found wasn't even marked. Just a gravel pull-off on a quiet 2-lane highway. No signs, no cars. The map didn't show any official trailhead, but there was a footpath leading into the woods. It looked used, not maintained, but clearly walked. A soft groove through the underbrush. I locked up the rig, took a bottle of water and a knife just in case, and stepped in. The forest swallowed the highway in seconds. The quiet was the first thing I noticed. Not the peaceful kind. Not birds or bugs or leaves rustling. It was dense, still, like the trees themselves were holding their breath. But the trail was clear enough. The kind that makes you think this place used to be something. A fire road, maybe. Or a game path. Wide enough to walk comfortably, lined with mossy stones, and the occasional old stump I walked maybe 30 minutes in. Wasn't in a rush. The deeper I got, the more I realized something strange. The trail behind me looked different. I'd glance back and swear it wasn't the same way I came. Things were closer together. The light hit differently. I told myself it was just the angle. You'd be surprised how fast the forest can confuse your sense of direction if you're not paying attention. Another 10 minutes passed. I stopped to drink water. That's when I saw the tree. There was something carved into it. Not initials or hearts, like you'd expect. It was a face. Small, crudely etched. 2 round eyes and a long open mouth, like it was screaming. Below it, another face, then another. The bark was crowded with them, stacked, all with the same expression. I stepped back, looked around. That's when I realized I hadn't passed that tree on the way in. I would have noticed it, I was sure. So how the hell did I get here if I never passed it before? That's when I turned around to head back. The trail was gone. I don't mean it faded out. I mean it was gone. Where there had been packed dirt and crushed leaves, now there was thick brush, branches, bramble, roots. Like it had grown back in a matter of minutes. Like it had closed behind me. I stood there frozen, listened, waited for something. A sound, a rustle, anything. But the forest was still holding its breath. I marked the tree with my knife and pushed forward in what I guessed was the right direction. The forest got tighter. The trees leaned in. I swear they leaned in. Limbs scraped my arms. The sun was filtering through, but it felt weak, like it didn't want to come all the way down. Then I heard the footsteps. They weren't loud, just light crunches. Not animal. 2-legged, slow, steady. Coming from behind, I didn't turn around at first, just kept walking. I could feel them getting closer. That weight in your spine like someone staring into it. I stopped and turned fast. Nothing. No one but the path behind me was clear again, perfectly clear, like it hadn't been blocked at all. just smooth trail disappearing into green shadow. The tree with the carved faces was gone, or moved. I couldn't tell. I took a step forward and heard it again. Crunch, from the other side. Now I spun, and the trail was blocked again. I don't know how to describe the panic that set in. It wasn't loud or frantic. It was cold, precise. My heart didn't race. It stopped. I looked down and realized my boots were half sunk into moss. New moss. Wet. Thick. I hadn't stepped in it before. The forest was rearranging. I started running. Branches tore at my shirt. Something caught my cheek, split it open. I didn't care. I ran until I hit open ground. A small clearing, oval-shaped. And in the center of it, a ring of stones. Black, burned, arranged in a perfect circle. Inside the circle, the dirt was dark and fine. Too fine. Like ashes, I didn't step into it. I knew better. I just stood at the edge, gasping. My lungs didn't want the air anymore. The air was heavy. That's when I saw the boot, half buried at the base of a tree, weathered, old, covered in moss. I walked over, pulled at it. It didn't come loose. I dug with my hands. Found the rest of the leg, the jeans, the belt. There was a body under there. No animal smell. No rot. Just stillness. Like it had been placed there and forgotten. That's when the wind came. Sudden, hard, all at once. Trees bent, leaves lifted. And I swear, I heard laughter. Not loud, just low. Like it came from under the ground. I don't remember how long I stood there. Could have been seconds, could have been hours. My brain was stuck, like a record skipping. Dead man in the moss. Laughter in the wind. A circle of black stone that didn't feel like it belonged to this part of the world. Then the air shifted again. The wind died, like it had never been there. The leaves stopped mid-tremble. The sun angled down a little sharper through the branches. And ahead of me, between two trees, I saw something that hadn't been there before. A path just wide enough to walk. Moss-free. Dirt-packed. I didn't think I walked. Every step felt heavier, like the forest wanted to hold my ankles. I kept my eyes forward. I didn't turn around, not even when I heard footsteps again. This time they didn't pause. They walked with me, parallel, through the brush. Same pace. After maybe 15 minutes, I saw the glint of metal through the trees. My rig. I broke into a run and didn't stop until I hit the gravel, climbed into the cab, slammed the door shut, and locked it 3 times. I sat there, sweating, gasping. And when I looked at the dash clock, I froze. 14 hours had passed. I'd left the truck around noon. It was almost 3:30 a.m. I started the engine and got the hell out of there. Didn't stop until I hit the edge of town. Found a truck stop, sat under the shower for 40 minutes without moving. I didn't sleep, couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the faces on that tree. Stacked, screaming. The next morning, I called in sick. Said the road had messed with me. Dispatch didn't ask questions. I didn't give answers. I went back a month later, not into the woods, just to the pull-off. It wasn't there. The trees were there. Yeah, but no gravel shoulder, no trailhead, no space wide enough to park a rig. Like the forest had folded itself back in. Like it had never let me in, or never meant to let me out. They say the forest is alive, but I think it's more than that. I think it remembers. And when you walk too far, or stay too long, or look at the wrong tree, it remembers you. I slept, next to something that wasn't breathing. I always sleep in my truck. I don't trust motels. Not the ones out in the middle of nowhere. Not after 20 years on the road. I've seen too much. Moldy rooms with hidden cameras. Weird stains on carpets. One time I walked into a room and found a full plate of food still warm on the nightstand. No one had checked in for 3 days, so I stay in the cab. Blackout curtains, insulated bunk, the hum of the auxiliary engine keeping me company. It's safer that way. Or at least it used to be. This happened 2 summers ago, late June. I'd just finished a run through Idaho, headed west toward a lumber drop in Everett. I was a few hours ahead of schedule, which almost never happens, and figured I'd get a night of rest somewhere quiet before dealing with the mess of city traffic. Route 20 is my usual pass through that area, especially when I want to avoid the interstate. It cuts through the North Cascades, mountains that look like they've been there since God first picked up a hammer. Beautiful country, thick woods, air that smells like pine needles and clean water, but also a place that turns dark fast. You're driving in sunlight, and 10 minutes later, it's shadow and mist, like someone pulled a curtain across the sky. I'd been on that road before, but never stopped overnight. This time, I found a spot that called to me. I know that sounds weird, but it's true. It wasn't a real rest stop. No bathrooms, no signs, not even a picnic bench. Just a wide patch of packed dirt off the side of the highway, tucked in behind a wall of trees. A logging trail, maybe, or a hunting access road, but flat, level, and quiet. No other vehicles, no light pollution. It felt like it had been waiting for someone like me to use it. I backed in, shut off the engine, and sat for a minute. Let my ears adjust to the quiet. It was heavy. The kind of silence that presses in on you, makes you aware of every little sound your body makes. Heartbeat, breath, the squeak of leather when you shift in your seat. I told myself I liked it, but something about it felt aware. I ate a quick dinner in the cab. Cold beef jerky, a can of peaches, and half a gas station burrito I didn't finish. I read through a few messages on my phone, played a puzzle game until my eyes got tired, and then locked up the cab. Curtains drawn, bunk light on. I left the side window cracked just enough for air. It's hard to explain how sleep works when you live on the road. It's not like at home. You don't ease into it. You crash. 1 minute you're scrolling through trip data. The next minute the phone's sliding off your chest, and you're out. That's how it was for me that night. But I didn't stay out. I don't know what woke me exactly. I've been asked that before, and I can't give you a clean answer. It wasn't a noise, and it wasn't a dream. It was more like a shift in the air, like something had nudged the atmosphere inside the cab just enough to make my body panic. You ever been underwater too long and finally break the surface, only to realize how long you were holding your breath? That's what it felt like I'd surfaced. Only when I opened my eyes, it was still dark, too dark. The bunk light had gone out, and the hum of the auxiliary power was silent, dead silent. No fans, no engine vibration, not even the tick of the dashboard, just cold, heavy air pressing against the walls. It was the kind of silence that doesn't feel natural, like a room that just finished listening to something. I thought maybe I'd accidentally shut off the battery unit in my sleep. I've rolled over onto the wrong panel button before, so I reached toward the control screen, half asleep, fumbling for the buttons. And that's when I felt the weight, not a blanket, not the mattress, a presence. There was weight on the mattress beside me, like someone had climbed in while I was sleeping, not moving, not breathing. Just there, I went, still. I've never been the panicking type, but my body locked. My breath thinned out like it was afraid of making noise. My fingers stopped halfway to the panel. I stared up into the dark and listened. Nothing. No breathing. Not from them. Not from me. That's when I realized I couldn't even hear my own heartbeat. That's the part that sticks with me the most. I wasn't just afraid. Something in that truck wanted me to forget I was alive. I'd had moments before. Creepy ones. I once parked in Nevada and woke up to a group of coyotes pacing in a perfect circle around my trailer. Another time, I caught a guy trying to open my passenger side door with a coat hanger, shirtless, barefoot, and smiling. But those were threats I could see. This was different. This was patient. My first instinct was to grab the knife I keep under the pillow. It's a folding blade, nothing special, but sharp as hell. I moved slowly, deliberately, reaching beneath the edge of the mattress. I never turned to look at the other side. I didn't want to see what was there. I found the knife, gripped it, then shifted slightly to slide my back against the wall of the cab, cold plastic against my spine. The weight on the other side didn't change. No movement, no sound, just pressure. Solid, unmoving, present. That's when my mind went somewhere it hadn't been in a long time. Back to my first winter run, out of Memphis, hauling snowmobiles north into Minnesota. I'd parked at a rest area near Duluth during a whiteout. No chains, just tire grit and blind faith. Slept with the heater full blast, but I remember waking up in the middle of the night and feeling this weird pressure in the cab. The windshield was fogged from the inside, like someone had been breathing heavily just inches away. Only I was alone. I convinced myself it was the heater vent, but I never slept right in winter again. This pressure felt the same, only colder. Only wrong. I didn't want to. Every instinct I had screamed to stay still, to wait for daylight, or for the weight to go away on its own. But something in me, maybe stubbornness, maybe just old road reflexes, pushed me to act. I leaned forward slowly, peeled back the edge of the blackout curtain that separated the sleeper from the front seats. It was like opening a door to a different room. The air changed, warmer somehow, but not safer. The cab was empty. My jacket still hung on the passenger seat. The console light blinked red, battery low. Nothing out of place, except the silence. It wasn't just quiet. It was like the world outside had been turned off. No wind, no highway hum, no tree frogs or night birds, just pressure and dark. I turned my head back toward the sleeper and stared at the other side of the bunk. The weight was still there. The mattress dipped. It was unmistakable. But the space was empty. No shape, no outline. Just that deep, unnatural impression in the foam, like someone had laid there long enough to leave their grief behind. I reached out, hand shaking, and touched the spot. Ice cold, not cool ice. And still, no breath, no presence that I could feel. No heartbeat but mine. If mine was still working, I couldn't take it anymore. I slid off the bunk, grabbed my boots, and pushed open the cab door. The air outside hit me like a wave of fog, dense, wet. Too cold for late June. My breath came out in long ribbons. I stood on the dirt and turned in a slow circle, expecting something, anything, to jump out from the trees. But there was nothing. The forest loomed around me, tall silhouettes, branches like ribs. No movement, no sound. I walked around the truck, flashlight in hand. No footprints, no disturbed gravel, nothing that said anyone had been there at all. But when I got back to the passenger side, I saw something I still don't talk about easily. There was a handprint on the inside of the window, not mine. Smaller, long, thin fingers, pressed hard enough to leave a full smear, and next to it, like someone had leaned their face against the glass, was a faint, foggy outline of a mouth. No nose, no eyes, just the suggestion of lips, open like they were trying to breathe me in. I opened the door and checked the seat. The indentation was there too, slight centered, like someone had sat there a long time, watching. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened, but it was the first time it felt personal. Years back, I parked overnight outside Eureka, California. Forest all around, coast wind whistling through the trees. Around 3 a.m., I woke to find every window in the cab fogged up from the inside. The smell was off, damp, sweet, like rotting bark. I wiped the windshield and found a feather taped to the glass, perfectly centered, long and white. I still don't know why it terrified me, but this wasn't a message. It was a visit. I didn't go back to sleep. I sat in the driver's seat with my knife across my lap and the flashlight resting against the dash. Every 20 minutes or so, I flicked it on and pointed it toward the tree line. Still nothing. But I could feel it. It was still close. I started the truck around 5 a.m. when the system finally responded. Lights came on. Battery gauge flickered back to life. I hadn't touched a thing. It was like the rig had been in some kind of stasis, held still until it was ready to let me go. I didn't wait for the sun. I pulled out onto the road and drove east until I hit real pavement. The forest rolled past in the mirrors like a slow wave. Green. Endless. Heavy with something I didn't have the words for. By the time I made it to a truck stop near Concrete, Washington, it was full daylight. Normal life again. People chatting in line. Eggs frying on a hot grill. I sat there for an hour, not ordering anything, just letting the noise of other people stitch my brain back together. That's when I checked the sleeper. The mattress had started to rise again. The dent was almost gone, but in the exact center where the weight had been deepest was a small patch of frost. In the middle of summer, I didn't tell anyone for a long time, but a few months later, I ran into a guy I hadn't seen in years. Old trucker named Red. White beard, big hands, eyes that didn't blink much. We were parked next to each other outside of Missoula, drinking coffee and swapping stories. I told him mine. Every detail. Thought he'd laugh or call me soft. But he didn't. He just nodded once and said, real quiet, "You parked too close to the cedar line, didn't you?" I said, I didn't know. He reached into his cab and pulled out an old laminated photo. It was blurry, looked like a screenshot from a dash cam. But in it, you could clearly see the inside of a truck cab. Passenger seat, window fogged up. And in the fog, a face, no eyes, no nose, just a mouth. Red told me there were places where the forest grows around things that aren't meant to move on. Places where the dead don't stay dead, but not because they're angry, because they're lonely. They wait for warmth, for sound, for someone breathing nearby. And when they find it, they crawl in. Just to be close, it's been 2 years. I still sleep in my truck, but never near deep woods, never near cedar, and never without salt under the mattress. Red said, "It helps. I don't know if I believe that, but I haven't had another night like that since." Still, every now and then, when I wake up in the dark and the engine hum isn't there, I hold my breath and wait to see if something is holding theirs too. Some people say, what you saw doesn't count if it didn't leave a mark, but wait leaves a mark. And when something lays down beside you without a name, you don't forget it. You just try not to hear it breathing when the engine cuts out. Voices between the pines. I've never talked about this, not out loud anyway. I've typed it, deleted it, half muttered it to myself on long hauls through the Rockies. But I never told anyone face to face, because I knew what they'd say. They'd look at me like I needed sleep, or pills, or both. But I know what I heard, and I know what I saw. This was during my 4th year as a long haul. I was still new enough to push dumb hours, old enough to think I could handle the weirdness that sometimes comes with driving solo through nowhere. I was headed west on a route through northern Utah, aiming to cross into Idaho by morning. I'd been on the road for 12 hours, and I knew I should have stopped, but I'd found this rest area once before. Nothing official. Just a gravel loop off a Forest Service road, surrounded by pines so tall they made the moon look small. That night I found it again. Same spot. Empty. Peaceful. Like something carved out of the woods, just for me. I parked, stretched, walked a few feet into the tree line to take a leak, then climbed back into the cab and shut everything down. But I couldn't sleep. The cab was quiet. The forest was quiet. But something in my head wouldn't shut off. Not the usual racing thoughts either. Something foreign. Like a second rhythm in my brain that wasn't mine. I laid there staring at the ceiling, then turned and looked out the window. That's when I saw the light. It wasn't bright, more like a glow, about 30 feet into the woods, down low near the base of a tree. It flickered like a lantern, but too soft, too still. I sat up, pulled on my boots, and stepped outside. The air was colder than it should have been for June. Not cold enough to see my breath, but close. I walked toward the light, slow, careful. Branches shifted above me. Pine needles crunched underfoot. When I got closer, I realized something that stopped me cold. The light wasn't on the ground. It was between the trees, just suspended there, floating like fog caught in a spotlight. And inside that glow, barely visible, was a shape. Not human, not animal. Just a tall, narrow figure with long arms and a head that tilted too far to the side. It wasn't moving, but I heard voices, not from the figure. From the trees, low whispers, like a dozen radios playing at once on the edge of signal. Some of the words were in English, others I couldn't place. But what froze me wasn't the language. It was that they were all saying the same thing over and over. He came in alone, he came in alone, he came in alone. And then the figure moved, not walked, just shifted, like it glided half a foot to the left without bending a joint. The light dimmed. The voices grew louder. Then everything stopped. Silence. Darkness gone. I turned and ran back to the truck. That should have been the end of it. But as soon as I got behind the wheel, the cab radio lit up. I hadn't touched it. It switched from AUX to AM on its own. The screen glitched, then landed on a dead station. Static, quiet at first. Then the voices returned, same ones from the trees, but now they said something different. He left, but not all of him. The cab lights dimmed. My GPS shut off. My heart was racing. I turned the key, engine caught on the first try, and peeled out of that clearing like my life depended on it. I didn't stop till I hit pavement. Didn't sleep for 36 hours after that. But the worst part wasn't the voices. It was the silence that came after, because I kept hearing it. For days, every time I passed a forest or a long stretch of trees along the highway, I'd get this buzzing in my ears, like a pressure drop, like the air wanted to whisper, but couldn't find my frequency. Then one day, I got out of the truck to check a flat. This was in Oregon, pines again. And while I was kneeling by the tire, I heard a whisper behind me, just one word, my name, clear as anything. No one there, just trees, just wind. But I haven't driven through woods since without hearing it again. Faint, repetitive, like something lost its signal and keeps trying to call me back. Some voices want to be remembered. Others never wanted to speak in the first place, but the trees don't forget. And if you hear your name whispered between the pines, don't answer, because the next time they won't ask. The firewatch tower. That wasn't there yesterday. I've got a rule when I'm on the road. Never stay anywhere that wasn't there yesterday. Truck stops, diners, gas stations, you name it. If it looks too new or too clean in the middle of nowhere, I keep driving. I trust old neon, cracked pavement, rusted signage. I don't trust polished chrome with no parking lot dust. This story starts with me breaking that rule. It was late August, about 2 years ago. I'd dropped a load in Boise and was heading north, empty, toward a lumber pickup near Coeur d'Alene. I like driving that corridor. Long curves, mountain air, thick stretches of forest between radio towers. It's peaceful, in a way that scratches something old in your bones. I'd planned to make it to a state-run rest area I knew near Priest River, but I got hit with fatigue hard and fast. That dead weight behind the eyes, the kind that comes for you not over hours, but in seconds. So when I saw a hand-painted sign that read, "Forest Tower Lookout, Public Access," I figured it was worth a detour. 5 miles off the main road didn't sound bad. Besides, I'd never seen that sign before, and I'd driven that route at least a dozen times. I turned onto the access road. It was gravel. Narrow. Trees closed in fast. The kind of green that shuts out the sky. But it was smooth. No washouts, like it had been maintained recently. That was the first red flag. About 15 minutes in, I saw it. A firewatch tower rising above the canopy. Classic design. Wooden beams, metal stairs, platform cabin on top. Looked like it had been there for decades, but clean. Real clean. Fresh paint, no graffiti, no weather damage. A little too perfect. The access road curved right up to it, ending in a wide gravel loop. No other vehicles, no ranger trucks, just the tower, a small shed, and a faded sign that read, "Lookout 11, last checked, June 1992. That date stuck with me, not because it was old, but because it was too specific. I parked, turned off the truck, and stepped out. The woods were quiet, not in a spooky way, just still. The kind of stillness you get before dusk, when the wind dies and the birds tuck in. I walked around the base of the tower. Solid beams, steel bolts. Everything about it said real, so I climbed it. The stairs were sturdy, a bit of creak, but no rot. I counted 48 steps before hitting the platform. There was a trapdoor entrance into the cabin, already unlatched. I pushed it open and climbed through. The cabin was untouched, not just clean. Preserved map on the wall, desk with logbooks, old binoculars mounted on a swivel post, a cot with neatly folded wool blankets. The air smelled like dust and dry cedar. I remember thinking it was like walking into a postcard. I opened the logbook on the desk. The last entry was from August 19th, 1992. Same day, I was there, but 30 years earlier. The writing was neat, careful. It said, "Night shift, quiet smoke to the east, over Ridge 12, unknown lights above tree line. Not lightning, will investigate in the morning. T.P." I sat there longer than I meant to, maybe an hour. The tower gave a full 360 view of the forest. Golden light bleeding through pine tops. No other towers in sight. No aircraft. No trails. Just green. Eventually, I decided to sleep there. The cab was fine. but something about the tower felt safe, solid, like a place built to watch, and maybe also to hide. I laid down on the cot and watched the sky turn blue, then purple, then black. That's when the lights came. The first light showed up around 10:30. I'd just started to drift off when the window across from the cot flared white-blue for a split second, like distant lightning. It wasn't a flash. It pulsed, then faded slow, like a held breath released into the trees. I sat up and watched. Another pulse came 3 minutes later, then another. Each time, the light came from the same place, east, just above the tree line, where the mountains dipped into a long valley. I figured it had to be a flare, or maybe some kids with a drone. But then it moved. Not fast, just a slow glide, parallel to the horizon, like a lighthouse beam slicing between the trunks. I stood, walked to the mounted binoculars, and turned them toward the source. What I saw didn't make sense. It was a column of light, not a beam, not a spotlight, just vertical, maybe 30 feet high, narrow as a man's shoulders, drifting between the trees like it was looking for something. Inside the column, there were shapes, flickering silhouettes, never holding long enough to resolve. Faces, elbows, something on all fours. All of it wrapped in a glow that didn't cast shadows. It didn't touch the ground. It just was. And then I heard it. Not loud, not even clear. Just a clicking sound carried on the wind. It reminded me of something I'd heard as a kid during a blackout. My uncle used to have a Geiger counter, an old crackling relic he claimed still worked. That soft, rapid tick-tick-tick whenever you got near something metal or dusty from the attic. That's what this sounded like, and it was getting closer. I stepped away from the window, shut the logbook, and considered my options. I could wait it out, pretend this was a dream, or I could leave, climb down the tower, and try to find the truck. That's when the lights in the cabin flickered. Only I hadn't turned on any lights. There were no bulbs, no power cords, no lanterns. The walls themselves pulsed, once, twice. And then the clicking stopped. I grabbed my backpack, slung it over my shoulder, and opened the trapdoor. The steps below were darker than I remembered, like the light from above refused to follow me down. I hesitated. My fingers gripped the first rung of the ladder, and I swear, it vibrated, not from wind, from something moving beneath me, but I started down. The climb felt longer than it should have. 48 steps going up, right? I counted 63 coming down, and I still wasn't on solid ground. The platform below looked the same, but the trees had changed. The shapes of them, the spacing. They looked closer, like they'd shifted inward, like they were trying to meet me. When I finally stepped off the stairs, I turned toward my truck and stopped cold. It wasn't there. Just trees and more trees. The gravel loop was gone. The road, gone. The shed, gone. I turned back to look at the tower. It was still there, only taller, thinner wrong. I must have stood there a full minute, just staring at the place where my truck should have been. I knew exactly how I'd parked. Head in, slight tilt toward the right side of the loop, gravel crunching under my tires. I remembered shutting the engine off, hearing it tick as it cooled. I remembered grabbing my water bottle and locking the door. I remembered the red stitching on my seatbelt when I'd pulled it loose. It was gone, and not just gone like stolen. Gone, like erased. The gravel loop I'd parked on was now pine needle forest floor. No indentations, no tire marks, no light reflecting off metal. Just trees, tall, dense, silent. The forest had moved, or maybe I had. The tower creaked behind me. I turned and looked again. It wasn't taller, Exactly. It just felt thinner, like it had stretched in the dark. The cabin at the top was now nearly impossible to see through the branches. The supports had twisted slightly, like someone had taken the whole structure and wound it a quarter turn clockwise, and it was humming a low vibration, not sound, just resonance, like a speaker you can feel in your teeth. I started walking. Didn't matter which direction. I picked a gap between two trees and moved through it, one step at a time. No flashlight, no trail, just a gut feeling that if I stood still, I'd become part of it. I walked until my feet started sinking into moss, then into soft, damp soil. Then, without warning, I stepped down and felt nothing, a drop. Not far, maybe 2, 3 feet, but sudden I landed on hard, dry stone. I turned around to see what I'd fallen into. It was a foundation square, like the base of a building. Black stone, like the kind I'd seen once in an old fire temple near Flagstaff. Smooth, but warm to the touch. Too warm. And in the center of it stood a man, or something shaped like one. No face, just a head wrapped in gauze or cloth. Long, loose coat that touched the ground. Bare feet. Still. He didn't move. Didn't breathe. But I felt him watching. Not with eyes. With space. Like the air around him had leaned forward to get a better look at me. Then he raised one hand and pointed behind me. I didn't want to turn around. I think some part of me knew what was back there. But I turned and saw the tower again. Only now, it wasn't a tower. It was open. Bent like a cage peeled apart. And inside it, hanging just above the ground, was a figure suspended by wires. Thin wires, anchored to trees, threaded through bone. It was me. Same boots, same shirt, same knife tucked into the same belt. Eyes wide open, mouth moving, but no sound coming out. I ran. I don't know how far. The trees didn't stop me. The ground didn't trip me. It all moved with me, like the forest wanted me gone now that I'd seen too much. I broke into a clearing. Sunlight hit my face, and I found myself standing next to my truck. It was back, exactly where I'd left it. The door still locked. The gravel loop perfectly undisturbed. The shed behind the tower still there, and the tower gone. I didn't even hesitate. I climbed into the cab, turned the ignition, and pulled out onto the forest road without checking the mirrors. Didn't stop, didn't look back. I just drove. Gravel gave way to pavement after what felt like minutes, but the GPS said I'd been on that road for over an hour. An hour I don't remember. My hands were shaking so hard I had to pull over near a ranger station 20 miles out. It was real. Staffed, civilian run, paperwork on the wall, and a calendar that said 2022, not 1992. I walked inside and asked the guy behind the desk, young, early 20s, buzz cut, about Lookout 11. He paused, looked at a map, then looked at me like I'd grown antlers. Not every mile marker shows up on the map, and not every forest lets you leave the same. If you're still listening, thanks for riding with Trucker of the Night. Keep your eyes on the road. Keep your stories close. And if you ever hear your name in the trees, don't answer back.